much for joining me today. I'm very happy to be here with Simon Says Stamp, and I'm going to be sharing these cards with you today that are part of the Simon Says Stamp Hey Love release blog hop. These cards feature some of the newest products from the Hey Love release, including the Heart Align die set, as well as the Christina's Love stamp and die set, and also the Laura's Love stamp set. So I'm going to be using these products in today's cards, and I'm going to do an inlay die cutting technique. Here I wanted to show you first of all the Heart Align die. I love this die because it not only cuts out the outline of the hearts, but it also cuts a ton of little hearts inside. So this is actually a perfect die set for using for any type of sized heart that you need. I'm going to be doing some ink smushing first to get started on my cards, and I've got a variety of distress inks laid out here. I'm smushing them onto a piece of freezer paper. I've covered my entire work surface with this freezer paper. I'm randomly smushing the ink pads down onto the freezer paper, and then I'm going to spray them with water to get the ink moving. I'm now going to take some watercolor paper, and this is cut down to be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. That's just so it's an easy workable size. I'm going to start picking up some of these colors, which include picked raspberry, abandoned coral, spun sugar, worn lipstick, and festive berries. I'm going to repeat this for 3 different panels because I have so much ink on here that I want to make sure I use up as much of the ink as I possibly can. This technique is really fun because each panel looks a bit different because we've got these inks mixing more and more together as we ink smush even more with the paper. I'm going to continue ink smushing these papers into this leftover ink until I've got them all covered with the watercolors. Now you can see the difference in the panel from the right to the panel on the left. The panel on the left was the very last panel that I created, so I have a lot more pink and red than I do with the panel on the right, which has a little bit more of an orangey tint to it because we have some of that abandoned coral in there. But because the inks mixed as we went along, we ended up having more of a pink and a red, which I think is really fun, and it gives a bit of variation to the panels. Now you saw me add water splatters to these panels, and that's so that way I can go ahead and lift off the water with my dry rag to create water spots. I let the water sit on these panels for about a minute before I went ahead and lifted the water off. Now here's how the panels and how they appear once they're dry. I let them air dry, but then I'm going to go ahead and take my heat gun just to make sure that they're good and dry because I am going to do some die cutting. And I want to make sure that these panels are completely dry before I go ahead and do that. But you can see the great variation in texture and color that we have on these panels because we did the ink smushing and also adding the water splatters. Alright, so for my die cutting, I'm taking that Heart Align die and I'm going to line this up onto my panel of paper here. Now, the Heart Align die fits just perfectly onto these 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch watercolor papers. I'm die cutting the hearts from that paper and I'm removing all of the negative pieces, and I'm also going to take the little outline piece as well. I'm saving all of these pieces to create my cards for today. Now I'm going to die cut this entire panel with these hearts, and I ended up die cutting all 3 panels, and I die cut each of them 3 times. So I had 9 sets of these hearts. And I ended up having a lot of extras, and I have a bonus video on my blog, and you can also find the link to it in my video description and also at the end of this video that will show how I used the leftover pieces to create a couple of quick and easy cards. So back to this particular card, I used the outline die cut and I'm putting liquid glue on the back side of those outlines and I'm lining these up onto my card. Now I created 2 different variations to this card. On the first card, I'm creating the hearts along a horizontal axis. And then on the second card, I'll actually put the hearts at a diagonal. So it'll be a little bit different, and you'll see me throughout this video working on both cards. Now you'll also notice I use my dry rag to go ahead and blot up any excess glue that's kind of squishing out around the edges. That just helps make sure that I press this down really good and I don't smudge anything because I am using liquid glue. So you do risk having a little bit of smudge when you're pressing down onto these die cut hearts. I just want to make sure that they're adhered down really well. Now this paper is a card base that I've cut from some Simon Says Stamp cotton candy cardstock. It's an A2 size card. And I'm going to continue adding these heart outlines onto my card base until I have it completely covered, as you see here. I just cut off any excess that was hanging over the edges with my scissors. Now to do the inlay, I die cut the Heart Align die from a bunch of white cardstock. So I have a bunch of white cardstock pieces that are cut from that same Heart Align die that I can use to interchangeably inlay into my little heart outlines. So I'm mixing and matching the little heart die cut pieces from not only the ink smushed backgrounds that we had die cut from, but I'm also adding some of the white die cut hearts in there as well. And that's just going to add some separation between the watercolored look of the hearts. It also adds a bit of contrast, so that way these hearts will pop really, really well off of this pink card base. So I'm going to continue adding these little hearts onto my card. Each heart is slightly different sized, so they each have a little bit of a different shape, and that helps you make sure that you're lining the right ones inside of the heart outlines. Now, to add some shimmer to these cards, I'm using the Pretty Pink Posh gold hearts in both the mini and the regular size. And I'm gluing these down with some liquid glue. I think this adds a lot of really nice shimmer to these cards. And this card you can see is the card that I adhered the heart outlines at a diagonal. I repeated the same steps for adding the hearts inside the outline die cut, but instead of adhering them straight across the card, I wanted to give it a little bit of difference and show you how you can change up the look of the card by simply changing the orientation of how the die cut is going across your card. So now that I've added the background, it's time to finish off these cards. I'm using the Christina's Love die set, and I die cut the word love. This is the word itself, not the outline. I die cut it from the cotton candy cardstock so that it matches the cotton candy card base that we have here. Now the reason I'm doing this is because I'm going to actually layer the cotton candy cardstock love pieces together. That's going to create a layer of 4 different die cut pieces that will give my final die cut, which is made from gold glitter paper, a little bit of dimension off of the cotton candy strip of paper that's going to go across this card. And because I cut this die cut from cotton candy cardstock, it's going to blend into that strip perfectly, and it's not going to be very noticeable. I'm going to continue layering these pieces up together until I have all 4 adhered. As I'm working on adding adhesive to the backside of each die cut, I'm smushing the entire piece with a clear block. And that's just helping give the paper some time to adhere and bond together while I'm working on adding adhesive to each piece. So I'll add this final layer on top of my die cut stack, and then I'll go ahead and lay that clear block right on top again while I work on adding a second sentiment underneath of the word love. I'm going to use the Coordinating Christina's Love stamp set, and I'm going to stamp the word you to pieces so that my sentiment will end up reading love you to pieces. I think that's a really cute sentiment and works for a variety of occasions. I'm using a piece of dull pink cardstock from Simon Says Stamp. I thought that coordinated really well with the picked raspberry that we have mixed in to our little die cut hearts. So I'm going to ink this up with some Simon Says Stamp clear ink, and I'll stamp that down onto my little cardstock strip. I'm going to heat emboss this with white embossing powder. I think the white really bounces off of the pink cardstock nicely, and I'll just go ahead and heat set this with my heat gun. And just to mention, all the products that I'm using in today's video are linked in the video description below, so you can go ahead and check that out if you see anything here that you might find of interest. Now I'm going to go ahead and trim this little strip of paper with my Tim Holtz mini snips, and I'm just going to cut some V ends to make little banner ends on this piece of cardstock. And then this cardstock strip will end up getting adhered underneath my sentiment. I first need to go ahead and put the strip of paper down across the center of my card where my sentiments will end up sitting. So I'm taking a piece of cotton candy cardstock, and I'm lining this up on top of a piece of vellum that I die cut using the Simon Says Stamp scallop border dies. I'm lining this up on my grid paper. This is the Simon Says Stamp Grid Matte, which is really handy because it has that nice grid on there, so that way I can go ahead and make sure everything's lined up perfectly. I added some foam tape to the back side of this entire piece, and I'm lining this up with the help of my grid mat onto the center portion of this card. I'll go ahead and press this down, and then with my larger Tim Holtz scissors, I'm going to trim off the excess that's hanging off of the sides of this card. These Tim Holtz shears will cut through anything, and they cut through this foam tape and all this cardstock really, really easily. To finish off my card, I'm layering my little love die cuts here onto my card base using some liquid glue. I'll just go ahead and lay that in the center area of the card, and then I'll take the little banner strip and adhere that down with some liquid glue as well onto the center area of the card underneath the word love. I'll add a clear block on top just to make sure everything adheres down well together, and I find that within about a half hour my card is completely dry. So here's a look at the 2 cards side by side. You can see how they look very similar, but yet slightly different because we changed the orientation of the card. So I think this is a really great way to use the heart aligned die to create some really beautiful inlay die cut looks. So I hope this has given you some inspiration on using some of the newest products from the Simon Says Stamp Hey Love release. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more inspiration. You can also head on over to my blog to enter into the giveaway and also continue hopping along to see everybody else's creations using the Hey Love release. And like I mentioned, there is another video that I created using the leftover die cut pieces from these cards. So be sure to go ahead and click on the video that you see on the left. That's going to take you to that video. And then the one on the right is another video that features the Simon Says Stamp Hey Love release. Thanks so much for watching this video. I will see you again soon, and have a fabulous day.